Hello, those of you joining live or catching the replay. So grateful to have you here. We are back for our next of the BodyTalks series, and I could not be any more excited. And I'm having a really awesome day. It didn't start out super awesome, but it has just gone way uphill and gotten better and better. And this past week and a half, I felt so many emotions, but it's really cool. I was just telling a friend, I feel like the things I've written down and have called in and have been wanting to manifest, I'm starting to really see them happen. They're like real life, and it's freaking amazing. So those of you who are manifesting your dream life, keep doing it, keep doing the vision boards, keep doing affirmations. The stuff works, you guys. I am just seriously on cloud nine right now. So I'm so excited to be here with you live, and I am so honored to have an amazing guest who is going to be joining us. I met Manasi a couple years ago here in Milwaukee through the Boss Ladies Milwaukee organization that I co-founded with my friend Diana. She's an amazing part of our group. Manasi has also been a speaker in my Empowered 365 membership. She did an awesome workshop on relationships and how to really thrive in those. And so I'm really excited to have her on here today. I know you guys are going to absolutely love her. I am just looking, Manasi, if you are, I think I saw you here, if you can just send a request. Let me see here. We'll just give it a moment to get her on here. Let me see if I can do it. I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. All right, so we will bring her on an intro. So we'll let her get on here. But Manasi is a boy mom to two little cuties. Here she is. She is a traveler, a reader. She's a postpartum relationship coach and a coach for moms. And she struggled with her own marriage and personal purpose after having her youngest, but turned her struggle into a passion to help other moms rediscover themselves. She helps mamas ditch the haze, confusion, and overwhelm around their identity and embrace their new passion and purpose beyond motherhood. So I am so excited. Welcome, Manasi. So excited to have you here.
Hi, Justine. I'm so excited to be here to join you on this very important series that you're doing. It's absolutely phenomenal and so needed.
Thank you so much. And it totally slipped my mind as I was doing the opening too, but again, the purpose of this series, the inspiration for it came from my book. I've got it here. My book is coming out in October. It's now available online for pre-order. But the thing is, why I wanted to tell my story is because I know I'm not alone in my story. I know that unfortunately so many women struggle with this stuff, with the body image, with, the food, with, really feeling in their power and in their worth. It just is way too common. So that's where I really wanted to bring other women's stories forward. And I know you and I are so aligned and have so much in common with our stories, which is really interesting because we have really different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So again, I'm so thrilled to have you here and grateful to have you here so that you can share your story with everyone here.
Thank you for having me. It's really phenomenal as to how certain things and certain themes kind of in women's life kind of supersede our cultural emotional backgrounds, like the way we were raised and everything. Certain themes kind of override everything, and they're common threads that kind of bind me to you, me to the other woman, you to the other woman, and there's these common themes that keep coming up, and what I think is that women as a collective have come together for another level of consciousness, that we are asked to be sharing our stories so that now we're like, okay, let's heal from this and let's up level.
Totally. Yeah. And I love that you said that, because one of the themes of my book was that I never really felt like I could really connect with other women. I didn't feel like I could trust other women. I kind of always felt like I didn't fit in. And I think there's a lot of that too. I think for so long, there's kind of been this like competing with each other or pitting ourselves against one another. And now I really do see a lot shifting with that. And I think a lot of it does come from, again, sharing our stories, being vulnerable, being open and willing to be seen so that we can say, oh my gosh, like I'm going through the same thing. I feel you. And, you know, really we're so much stronger together when we know that we're not alone.
Absolutely. And I love that you said it's about us giving ourselves permission to be vulnerable with other women, you know. And I think sometimes we are so bad at doing that because we think that she will think I'm less than her if I'm vulnerable. And that's why we call it vulnerability, right? That fact that you are choosing to show your heart and your wounds and your scars. And really, it's so vulnerable. And that's when the cattiness and the defensiveness comes in. But if you become an ardent supporter of women like you are, I think you're a perfect example. And I can see you've done the work because the way you support maybe the ladies and boss ladies, you know, you are unconditional with your support. You know, even if it's someone who's actually in your same field, you're unconditional with the support. To me, that's phenomenal. That shows that you have done the work.
Well, thank you for that. And it has been work. It has been, you know, there's been time and a whole journey behind that. Again, even with feeling like one of my friends recently asked me, like, do you ever worry about how many people are doing what I'm doing kind of in the food freedom space? And I'm like, heck no. For one, I mean, we need someone on every corner being like, can I tell you how to love yourself and break free from, you know, but also I really believe in one of the principles of boss ladies that we stand behind is like, there is no competition when you're manifesting in your own lane. Like when you are being your authentic self, no one can ever take that from you or do what you do or say it like you do. And I know you feel the same. We're here for a purpose. Like each of us are here for an individual purpose. So there's really no such thing as competition.
Absolutely. And I think that has a lot to taking on personal responsibility for doing the work, you know, and be like, I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready to hunker down and not let my life be dictated by my traumas or my triggers, you know. And so I think you've done that so successfully. And I'm so excited for your book coming out in October.
Thank you. Thank you. So I gave a little background on you, but I'd love to hear in your own words, like your kind of your backstory, where you're at now. Tell us all of that good stuff.
So I have to take you really back to tell you a little bit of my background and also to give you a little bit of context, right? So I was born in India, but I was raised in Botswana. For those of you who don't know, Botswana is actually a little country in Southern Africa, all right? You'll be able to find it if you look at a map. It's right above South Africa, all right? And that's where I spent 17 years of my life. But my family, the family I grew up in, everything was very, very conservative Indian family, even though we lived abroad, right? We lived away from India. And the weird thing about growing up in an Indian family was that, especially outside of India, was that nothing changed in terms of like mentality and progression, right? When I was born, my grandparents didn't welcome my birth because I was a girl. And in our culture, when I had an older sister already, so now a second girl being born in the family is not necessarily a time of pride for them. They wanted a son. They wanted a grandson who will carry on the lineage, the name of the family, right? So I remember when my mom brought me home. Well, I remember my mom telling me the story where she brought me home to my grandparents' place and they had left. They had locked the door and they had gone away. And that's the way I was kind of welcomed into the world, right? And for those of you who understand trauma theory would understand that the first 2 years of any child's life is so crucial, right? And I used to cry when I used to say this story, but like obviously I've done the work, but it still hurts. Like at the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, imagine where your birth or your existence is not valued, right? So my story started there. And then when I went to Botswana and stuff, we were growing up and everything like that. We were always expected to get married early, have kids early, and just be like a wonderful stay-at-home mom. That was the expectation, right? So I was always like, I'll show you. I'll show you that I'll be better than that, the son that you wanted. Or I have a brother. My parents had a wonderful son, and I love him to bits. But the fact is, it was still always a mental competition in my head, where I had to prove my worth, my value. But when I used to speak up for my rights, it was looked down upon. Because what women were expected to be in my family was they needed to be small, they needed to be silent, and they should be providers. That's it. And so when I was challenging the status quo, it really bothered my parents, because they didn't know what to do with a girl who was so strong-minded, so strong opinionated. But the fact was, like, oh, they were scared what would happen once I'm married. And they were right, because at the age of 13, when I hit puberty, obviously, you know, you go, it's like probably the worst time ever, where everything is going wrong, your body's changing, and you can't make sense of it. Until then, I had never thought about, oh, what do I look like? Well, you know, till then I was just happily living life. I never thought about my physique or how I looked or how I appeared to other people. But I remember one trip in particular to India, and all of a sudden, people started looking at me as a woman rather than a girl, you know, a little girl. And I'm 13, for God's sake. But anyways, they started doing that. And I remember that trip, every family member I came across said this one line to me: "You're really pretty, only if you were a little skinnier."
Mm.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, what does that mean? Like at 13, I was like, I don't even understand what that means. So I kept asking my mom, like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Like, what are they trying to implicate through that? And she was like, oh, just ignore them, right? And then in particular, I think this is where my trauma with food and all that started, and body image really hit me was, so this is very interesting. My husband's father was my dad's best friend growing up, right? So they were like best of friends and everything. So we were very close family friends. And I remember him in particular because I was always very fond of their family. We were very close growing up, you know. And all of a sudden, I remember him saying to me for the first time was that if you were my daughter, I would never let you get so fat.
Mm. Wow.
And I remember, and this takes me a lot of courage because this is the first time I've actually taken his name and acknowledged this story. But the fact was that was a very, very wounding for me, because it was like someone I looked up to, someone I admired, all of a sudden, who was supposed to be a father figure for me, saying something so out of, you know, the box. You're like, why would you say something like that? Anyways, I remember after that, I started starving myself. Mm-hmm. I would go long periods of time where I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't eat cheese. I cut out everything that I thought was fattening at that time with my very limited nutrition knowledge, what you may call it. And I remember waking up at night, being 15 years old, and just crying because my stomach was hurting so bad. And I could feel the acid boiling in my stomach. And it was so painful. And I just looked up and I said, there has to be a better way. And then at the age of 17, I decided I'm going to move to the United States all by myself. And I'm going to pursue my bachelor's in nutrition. And then I went on to pursue my master's in public health nutrition, because I knew that if I'm going through this, there are other Indian women just like me going through the same crap. And there needs to be a better answer to it than starving yourself. And so I went ahead, did 6 years of college and worked in the nonprofit arena for 6 years. But I realized that something didn't change. I knew all the clinical knowledge. I knew all the public health knowledge. But what wasn't changing was my self-image. What wasn't changing is my body image issues. And then I really started doing the inner work. And I became a mom. And that's when it became even worse, right? Because as a mom, you're going through postpartum, you're going through all the weight gain. And you're like, I don't recognize myself anymore. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to shift it. I have to figure this out. I'm going to hunker down, do the work. Started reading like crazy, and I started doing the work. And I was like, I don't want to pass this on to the next generation. It will be absolutely criminal that now that I know better, that I don't do better. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to change it. And that's how I actually came and became a coach, relationship coach. My husband and I did it together. And we're like, we're going to change the story about how we view couples, relationship, and how we view ourselves by working on ourselves first. And that's how I started. And that's how I became a relationship coach. That was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's again, you know, I've really realized that more than ever with writing the book is like, you know, sometimes I'd be like, how did I end up here? Or like, why do I struggle with this so much? Why was I so messed up? And it's like, when we really do trace it back and we look at this whole picture from, again, you know, from our birth or the first few years of our lives, really what we were deciding about the world and who we were in it and our place, like that happened so young. And then it's really interesting, your story, because I also have like an incident, a story at 13. So I first thought I was overweight at 7 in second grade, and my mom took me to the doctor, and the doctor said that I was overweight in the 90th percentile, said all this stuff in front of me. And so in grade school, I was already trying to do Slim Fast, but I didn't really get it. I was like adding it to my like chicken tenders and mac and cheese. So it was not very effective. But then middle school, like you said, 13, like it's this age that suddenly like everything changes. It's confusing. It's uncomfortable. It's such a weird time. And again, as you start to become a woman, but you still are completely a child, you know what I mean? It's a very vulnerable, fragile time. And that was when I finally figured out how to lose weight. So I was getting praise from adults, and I can remember like a neighbor high-fived and said, you got skinny. And I got like a lot of comments, not from adults, but from other people, you know, again, these adults, where at that age too, you're looking at adults like they know best and they know what's real. So you take it very seriously, you know, you take it in. So it's like whatever they're saying, again, I look back, I'm like, why are people commenting on 13-year-olds' bodies? Like that's, you know what I mean? It's so, now looking at it as an adult, I'm like, that's so inappropriate. But for totally different backgrounds and stories, like to have had the same experience at that age, it's really wild. And again, like this is why we need to be talking about this stuff, because the more that people know and understand, you know, I really truly think parents do the best they can with what they have. But I think so many previous generations, it's just like, this is what it is. And, you know, and not even questioning anything, and not, you know, not like you've said a lot, like doing that deeper work.
Yeah. And that's where it really bothers me, when people don't question stuff. You know? And as parents, I think we really need to question everything and really make up your own mind. It's okay to be different. It's okay to do things differently. And you need to give yourself that permission, that freedom. May it be freedom from eating or dieting, from freedom of thinking different. Like you need to give yourself permission to be different. Yeah. You know? And do you remember a time when we were in school where being different was so looked down upon? And totally. I say it's so cool to be different as you become an adult, right? And I keep on telling my son the same thing, my boys. I'm like, it's great being different. Don't try and fit in. Like, you don't have to fit in. You're never going to fit in, because not one person is like. So you might as well just be different and embrace it. You know what I mean? So questioning everything you're doing in your life is actually a good starting point for doing some inner work. You know, it's asking yourself, well, why do I do these things? Or why does talking to this person trigger me? You know, so yeah.
Yeah. So, and that actually, to jump around a little bit, one of the questions I wanted to talk about, but with questioning, and one of the themes of my book is to burn the rule book. So again, all of these things are just handed or passed down from society, all this messaging. I wrote specifically about unspoken rules of being a woman and the messaging we get. Girls, I think, again, no matter what culture you're in, we get very specific messaging about what that means. and what it means to be valued as a woman in our society, you know, in any society. So part of my whole, you know, process was unlearning and, you know, throwing things out, burning the rule book, and then again, really going back to myself and asking like, well, what do I believe to be true? And like, how do I want to live? How do I want to operate? So I'd love to hear for you anything that comes to mind as far as a rule that you have thrown out, thrown away, anything you've unsubscribed to that you used to believe maybe growing up or that was kind of pushed on you that you have since really created your own truth around.
I think the number one thing for me while in my 20s was people pleasing. I was a through and through people pleaser, where it was like I wanted to be that good daughter, I wanted to be that good sister, I wanted to be that perfect wife, I wanted to be that perfect mom who bounced back in like a month after delivering her baby. And I wanted to be perfect, where I wanted everyone to say, oh my gosh, I don't know how she does it, you know. And it was almost like this invisible standards I had created for myself, because I felt like my in-laws expected something, my mom, my dad, everyone had expectations of me, you know. And I had the highest expectation anyone had was me, of myself. And so what I realized was like, you cannot please people at all. You cannot please everybody. And the fact is that if you are a people pleaser, you need to look back as to why do you need that approval? What is that approval going to give you? And I still go back, because we are conditioned to think certain ways. So I'm like, okay, why am I thinking this way? Why is it important for me to make that person happy? And what am I going to get out of it? And the answer is like, oh, well, that person will be happy. Well, then what expense is it coming as? Is it coming at the expense of my joy, my peace of mind, my personal happiness? Or is it getting into the way of me rearing or raising my kids the way I want to, or my husband and my relationship? I have to really prioritize and figure out what's important to me, what brings me joy, and then from there, evaluate everything. And so that's what I've started doing. And really, I realized that when people have these standards or expectations of you, it's all on them. It's not you. So even if you meet, quote unquote, that standard, they're still going to feel like you somehow failed them. So why even try? So that's one major lesson I've learned from my 20s to my 30s, is that I'm not even going to try and people please. That's not going to work. And it's best for my peace of mind.
Yeah, so good. And I can totally relate. Like I definitely still struggle with this. I'm still breaking a lot of those habits, and really I've said it was like the summer of boundaries, because you know when like a lesson is coming for you again and again, and you're like, yeah, but like you keep kind of doing what you've been doing, and then it like hits you harder. So it was kind of like that, like learning the hard way. I think you can learn the easy way with those gentle nudges, or I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert that says it's like the 2x4, like when you're not not getting. So but yeah, and it's like with people pleasing, it's like, again, like you said, at what cost? It's like when we're sacrificing ourselves and we feel terrible just to keep someone else comfortable, you know, it's like, what is that really doing for us? And yeah,
other than resentment, you know, and the resentment is so toxic of an emotion to hold on to, I feel. And resentment leads to anger, and you're just bottling it up, because again, like as women, the rule book, right, that untold rule book that we were handed was that anger is bad for women, but it's okay for men to have. You know, it's okay for men to express their anger and their frustration, but it's not okay for women to.
Right. Yeah. And that is one that I wrote, you know, keep others comfortable. And that was a big theme, is it's like, yeah, don't rock the boat. What do we say? Be a good little girl, which again, what does that mean? Like, be quiet and
shut up.
Yeah. Be seen, not heard, and be really perfect as you're being seen. That is
just be pleasing to the eye, and the only way you're pleasing to the ear is if you don't say anything.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, you know.
Yeah. And then, like you said, I totally agree, in relationships with others and ourselves, resentment is like, it's like a cancer that grows and just like, turns into a bigger and bigger problem the longer that we ignore it and don't look at it. Like, resentment is the silent killer. I always say that I've learned with my marriage now, I'm like, I never ever want to hold on to any of that. So,
Yeah.
step up right away, even if I know it's small or, might seem like it's not a big deal. It's like when things bother us, again, whether it's in relationship with ourselves or others, it's like we've gotta use our voice, and we can do that really lovingly. I think you are such a beautiful example of that. Like, even as you're saying, as a child, that like your parents didn't know what to do with your energy, but I was also like, you have such a grounded, like, it's from such a pure loving place, and we can be strong and we can assert boundaries and we can use our voice in the world and do it from a place of pure love and, kindness and compassion. And I feel like, again, you're just a beautiful shining example of that.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. And I think I love that you brought up the correlation between resentment and marriage, and the fact that you can say and be assertive in your relationships, which you need to, especially your closest relationships, but do it in the most loving and kind manner, because you're not out to get your spouse, you're not out to get your children, but you can absolutely be assertive and give your side of the story, but without them feeling bad. And again, how does that happen is when you have done the inner work, right? When you feel sure of yourself, when you feel like your needs are worthy of being stated, right? Imagine if I don't believe I'm worthy or I'm of value, so this is what my life is meant to be, and people will walk over me all the time. If you always feel that way, it's pretty much impossible for you to be assertive in your relationships.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So again, it brings up all the concepts from your book so beautifully, is that you have to build up you. You have to value you first. You have to recognize, even first of all, most women don't even acknowledge the women who's living within.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start acknowledging her, that's when you will be able to show up as your true authentic self in your relationships, and you will not feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I'd love to hear you go even deeper on that. Like, really, again, connecting with yourself, acknowledging that woman within. I'd love to hear you.
Yeah. So, for example, right, and I'm going to go into a little bit of my relationship with my husband. When we had our first baby, we were so young. We were 26 when we got married at 23, 24, had our first baby at 26. We were pretty much babies, to be really honest with you. When I think about it in the context of the world and everything, and we were still figuring out life ourselves. But at that time, we were so into like doing the right thing, culturally speaking, with my in-laws. I was trying to be that good daughter-in-law and everything like that. But what I realized was, because I was such a people pleaser, and the fact that I was like, oh, my needs are not important. Even postpartum, my needs are not important. I have to make sure everyone in the family is comfortable and everyone is settled. Forget the fact that I just delivered a baby, and the baby is, I mean, it was hard. It's hard anyways. But I had a colic baby. And if you know anything about colicky babies, that they cry incessantly for hours. I remember one particular day where my oldest cried 18 hours straight. Mm-hmm. And it totally wrecks you. It wrecks you. You feel like you're absolutely failing as a mother. But what happened was that when I started being like, oh, of course, like, you don't know what you're doing. You're obviously failing to be that good mother, that good daughter-in-law. You're not making people happy. Everyone kept on passing comments as to like how I should be breastfeeding or how I should be taking care of my child and how I was doing it all wrong. Right? And these were all the women in my in-law side that were coming at me. And what I started recognizing was that I was taking out all my frustration and resentment on my husband, because I felt he is a representative of his family, and you look at him to like protect you, and he fiercely protected me. Mind you, he put down a boundary. He was like, okay, you're not welcome in our house till you can learn to respect my wife. Right? Now he's doing all that. He's setting up boundaries. He's not letting people violate those boundaries. He's setting straight there. But I remember that first year postpartum, I really felt so mad and angry at everybody, including my husband, where I felt I'm not getting the support I need and everyone's disrespecting me and all that sort of stuff. But when I realized that I needed to do more of the inner healing and I needed to realize why I am mad, why am I angry? Is it because it was just that incident about postpartum, or was it all the way to the beginning where I felt like I was of no value from my birth? So when you're a mom and you become a mom, everything becomes about baby. So you feel even more resentment where you're like, how did everyone forget me? I worked so hard for 9 months growing this baby, pushing him out and exhausted beyond imagination. And all of a sudden I am in the shadows and I'm doing everything.
It's interesting you say that, because just a few weeks ago I was listening to a podcast, and I'm not a mom so I cannot relate, but they were talking about how I had never thought of it this way, that when you're pregnant, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. Look at your baby bump, your belly. It's like, you know, all this attention and being like showered. And then the baby comes out and you need support more than ever. You know, everything, your body's different, your hormones are different, you're mentally going through things. Like there's so much going on and everyone forgets about you. It's like the baby.
The baby.
Yeah. And I was like, that is so crazy, because it's so true. And I think it's amazing that you're doing coaching for that time for postpartum, because there's just not enough, again, something that we don't discuss enough as women. That is something so many women deal with. And, you know, so many, again, of like the mental health issues, the depression, the anxiety, even the bodies. Again, we celebrate celebrities on the magazine covers with that beautiful baby bump, but once it's out, it's like, let's tighten it back up. I don't know that you gave to a human, like let's put that away. Like it's just insane messaging.
It is. And again, you see what's happening in the media. What is the message am I receiving? Is that, oh, that celebrity snapped back in like 2 weeks after giving birth, so I should be able to, right? You know? And so like when you fail to do that, all of a sudden there's this mental image that's being created in your head, and like, oh, that doesn't match my reality. You know, so I'm failing. Obvious answer is not the fact that I'm failing. Oh, they have like zillions of other doctors and surgeons who are helping them. They have nannies, they have night nurses, so many other things, but we are comparing ourselves to this unrealistic standard, right? And so again, that came back to being like, why am I so hurt? Why am I so wounded? And parenthood does that to you. It really, you spend 9 months almost going back to your childhood, evaluating your relationship with your parents, how you grew up. And a lot of things came to light for me. And it was the fact that I was not welcomed when I was born, right? And that wound opened up for me. So I was very raw. I was very wounded, and I couldn't imagine. And we didn't know the gender of our child. It was going to be a surprise at birth. So for me, I'm like, oh, if it's going to be a girl, I'm going to do this. If it's going to be a boy, I'm going to do this. So for me, I couldn't fathom the idea of someone not celebrating my birth.
Yeah.
And I wounded so hard, and that's when that opened up. So there's rawness. So once I started doing the work, I realized once I heal, I can show up better for my spouse.
Yeah. So I'm curious I have a couple questions with kind of like the work and what that looked like, your actual healing journey. So I want to go a little bit back to where I know you said as a teenager, again, at like 15, you were starving yourself to try to look a certain way, to try to fit this skinny ideal. How do you feel? I know you said you went into nutrition and then again realized that like the deeper stuff was still there. So what really helped you shift the food and body piece? Like what did that look like for you, really healing that and getting out of that place where you felt like you had to starve yourself?
So I became very, very almost obsessed with my healing journey, right? Almost like I want to find the answers. And I remember I was like my lowest low around 3 years postpartum. And it's how crazy is it that you can go so many years without any doctors, kind of diagnosing you with the problem. And it can become quite chronic. And so what I did was that I'm going to be my best advocate. I'm going to find the person who can help me. And so I actually started going to therapy, and I didn't stop till I found the right fit, right? I found a person who was able to hold space for me, let me explore all my stories, my wounds, and go deep into it without judgment, right? And so I finally found a wonderful man, and someone who could go beyond just the cultural context. He could understand how human behavior affects people at a fundamental level. And when I started going into it and I started understanding my relationship to men and the patriarchy that created these body image issues within me as to what was expected of me being an Indian woman and how that affected me, I realized that body image, or what I thought about my body, was just a mere symptom of what I was conditioned to believe about myself. But that required me to almost join dots to my childhood and incidences. So it was hard work. It was so unpleasant. It was so uncomfortable. It was so much tears. But once I started connecting the dots, it all of a sudden realized, I'm like, wow, because that person men are so fragile in our culture that they are not allowed to express their emotions. In my culture, universally, we've seen that men's emotions are not welcomed, right? So they don't know how to assert themselves. They don't know how to safely share their emotions. So what do? They become resentful. They are also becoming angry. They're building up toxic emotions. And what do? They suppress women, right? And that's how the patriarchy perpetuates. More so, the perpetuators are women who are also wounded, who are perpetuating patriarchy, right? So the fact is, like, when we give into these body image issues, when we are like, okay, I'm going to listen to them, I'm going to starve myself, I'm going to diet, I'm going to crazy work out, we are giving into that narrative, right? And I realized, okay, I'm done. There came a point, which I'm talking about therapy, weeks after weeks, there was a turning point when I felt complete joy. And I'm like, I know why this happened to me, but I am done.
Mm-hmm.
I am done. I am done. I'm done. I'm done.
Yes. Yes. That's like that unsubscribe moment. Like, yeah, I love it.
And I think that was that turning point. But then I went to a coach, because there's so much talk therapy that one person can do. But then the next is the doing part. And that's where I felt coaches really changed the game. Yeah. Right? Where I'm like, okay, I needed therapy to get to this point, but now when I want to up level and be like, okay, I want to change the narrative. I'm ready to change the narrative. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to be someone different. I'm going to show up my authentic self. That's when I felt coaches are magicians. Yes. And I think that's where a coach comes into play. Mm-hmm. When things changed for me, to be really honest. But that turning point has to come before that, and then the coaching comes into play, where you can totally up level yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And actually, my journey, it's interesting the way you're describing it, because my journey was the same. I was in therapy first, and it's like, in a way, we've got to kind of like purge everything, get it all out, talk through these things, look back, look at stuff we don't want to look at. But then coaching is like you said, that next level where it's like, feel like it's that intentionality of like, cool, now that we can see it all and we have this awareness, where do we want to go with it? Like, what do we want to focus on? And, and even like the departments, it's like, I'm such a believer in coaches. I always say, like, I have usually more than one at any given time. Of course, I believe in coaching. Like, that's, like you, it's like, because it's changed my life, that's why I do it now. But I also think, again, just like bringing on that support, it's like whatever area you want to be better in, or where you're struggling, or like where you need some extra support, it's like, why wouldn't you bring someone else on board that's gonna hold you high and, you know, kind of have that outside perspective, and again, give you the steps, like really having you take action, you know, more than just constantly talking about stuff and looking at stuff. That's very, very, very valuable. But then it's like, cool, where do we want to go and how are we going to get you there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the highest form of self-love is saying what you need and getting the help you need.
Mm. Yes, I love that.
You know, so I think that's what we need to, as women, we're so bad at asking for help.
Yeah.
We have this superwoman syndrome. And I feel like if we would just let people help us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm so guilty. Mind you, I'm saying this right now. I have to check myself so often
Mm-hmm.
where I'm like, okay, I need to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's okay. And that's where having a coach is that magician part, you know, where they will help you even learn how to ask for help. So, but you need to identify what is it that you need, you know? And so
Yeah.
the reason why I love coaching.
Yes. And you said all of that so beautifully. And even with asking for help, it made me think of like, also even just reaching out to, you know, our support system, friends, again, women. That's why I love our boss ladies community, because so many women, it's like genuinely want to help one another. And also I think of like, if a friend reaches out to me and they're just like, look, I'm like having a rough day, or I'm having like a weird moment, like it's always like, it feels so good to be able to help too. It's like a gift for both people, because you get to just be like, hi, I'm human, like everyone. I am struggling at this moment, here's what it is. That feels good already, you know, just being able to own that and be okay with it. And then again, the opportunity to help someone else, you know, is so there we go. I'm having all the phone issues here. So yeah, but I love that whole piece on like really being able to ask for support. And I still sometimes I like just genuinely like forget, and I'll like spiral or just like be in my negativity longer than I need to. And I'm like, oh right. And like once you're in communities and containers and have, you know, a coach or, you know, all this support, again, once you kind of really build that foundation, and I think that's a super loving, supportive thing that you can do for yourself. It's like, oh, well, actually I can reach out to this person or that person or get help here, and just make it so much easier on ourselves, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that as much of an art as it is to be a giver, it's that much of an art to receive with, you know, with gratitude. And I think we are so good at giving, and we're so good at the art of giving, that we are so bad at the art of receiving. Well, let's work on that. You know, you kind of have to make a resolution of, let me work on my art of receiving for a change.
I am personally taking that in, because that is the third time I've heard that in a week. even and even with the book, like, because again, it's like all these things are happening, all this support is showing up, this love, and it's like I am not really great at receiving that. So it's been coming up over the past week, and it's like being able to be like, thank you, and really, you know, even again, another thing with women, like for me, it took me a really long time to learn how to accept compliments and not do that thing of like, someone, you look great today. Oh my gosh, I haven't washed my hair. You know, like that whole thing we do.
Yeah. Oh, don't say that. I look like
Yeah.
I have better days. You know what I mean? And we're so bad at just receiving compliments. And I remember there was this someone. So I have this beautiful babysitter. She's like family, and she does that. And I was like, hold on, take a second and take that in. Right? You're a great person. You really take such great care of my kids. You're always on time. You're punctual. And I actually made her sit down and take in the compliments. Because I was like, why? She was so uncomfortable. Like, I think I probably was like, she was be like, can you just let me go? This is so uncomfortable. And I was like, no, we're going to sit here and acknowledge all the amazing stuff that you are. But it continues it continues this thing, but I'm like, we're going to talk about this, that you have to, work on your art of receiving as women, maybe compliments, maybe help, maybe emotional support, maybe, physical support, and when you're like moms, it's okay for your partner to be financially supporting you because you're doing important work of raising the children, so like be okay with that. It's okay in the art of receiving, and so I hope women work on that for sure. But also, so excited for your book. I'm so excited. I think just to absorb in all your life lessons is going to be so amazing.
Thank you so much. And my phone has been wiling out this whole time. I don't know what's going on. We have a lot of planets in retrograde, so we'll blame that. But so I don't this recording, but one question I want to quickly ask before we go is if there is a woman here today that is like, again, understands doing the work is important, wants to get started, and kind of just doesn't even know where to begin, what would you share with her?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. If she wants to get started, I would just say, you know what? Just pick up a book. And the reason why I say that is because there's stuff about you that people know that you don't know. All right. Mm-hmm. But then there's stuff about you only you know, right? Where no one else in the world, even your spouse, doesn't know about you. It's internal thoughts and feelings and stuff. Mm-hmm. But you read a book, right? Maybe any book, even if it's a novel, things about you that you don't know, your subconscious knows, is going to start coming out. And really, when I'm feeling really low, I pick up that book and I start reading. And weirdly, the universe has a way of doing this. You read exactly what you need to read.
Totally.
And that's I started my journey from, was reading. The more I read, the more I recognized, oh, I need help. Oh, I need to talk to someone. Oh, I recognize this in me. I do that. I am doing that. It may be even a weird character in a fiction book. You realize and you start recognizing, but start reading. Maybe I used to tell the girls I coach, read 2 sentences a night before going to bed. If you can't read, if you're an exhausted mama, just read a sentence before you go to bed. Then next day, read 2 sentences. Then the following week, read 3 sentences. Then build up your reading stamina again, and you will see you'll be able to start doing the inner work. That's the basic. First point is reading is so crucial to your journey. It really is. So pick up the book. Pick up the books.
Yes, I could not agree more. I love books, as you know. We both share that. We had talked about even novels. I just finally this year started letting myself read fiction. I'm like, I could also read for fun. So, but yeah, just there's something, like you said, you can still awaken parts of yourself in a novel and recognize things. And yeah, I'm obviously obsessed with books, so I love that advice. Awesome. Well, thank you, Manasi, so much. If you guys are not following her, definitely go follow her, and also Connected Couples. I will drop that here too in the handle. I'm going to see if I can bring these 2 videos into one, bring them together, and then share it. But definitely check that out. Again, her and her husband do couples coaching. Manasi is an amazing coach for mamas as well. So you do not need to struggle. There are people who would love to help you and support you in your journey, and you are so worth it. You are worth getting the support you need. So again, Manasi, thank you so much. As always, just sharing so much gold, and I just love connecting with you. So thank you for being here and sharing so courageously and so vulnerably.
Yeah, thank you, Justine. And I am so excited for your book, really. And if that's the book people pick up first, they couldn't be a better pick.
That's a lot of pressure, but but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, and see you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.